Hey guys, tonight we're stepping into a time machine. And trust me, you'll want to leave your casual Fridays at home. We're heading to the Joseon Royal Court, a place where mind your manners wasn't just a polite suggestion. It was a life or death decree. Imagine yourself in 15th century Korea standing before the magnificent yet utterly terrifying gates of Gyeongbokgung Palace. The sun glints off the vibrant dancheong patterns on the eaves, dragons and phoenixes painted in vivid reds, blues, and greens, seemingly watching your every move. The air thick with the scent of pine and something subtly metallic, perhaps, the lingering hint of ancient rituals or unspoken power feels heavy. You can almost hear the rustle of silk robes and the soft, measured footsteps of courtiers. Each movement a carefully choreographed ballet of deference and self-preservation. It's beautiful, breathtakingly so, but beneath that beauty lies a razor-sharp edge of expectation. One wrong step, one misplaced glance, one even slightly ill-timed cough, and your journey into courtly life could very well be over before it truly begins. This isn't your average oops. I use the wrong fork scenario. This is oops, I'm now banished to a remote island or worse. You might think your social anxieties are bad, but try navigating a world where a polite smile could be misinterpreted as insolence and sincere flattery could be seen as veiled mockery. You probably wouldn't survive a week, so before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Now tell me, where are you tuning in from tonight and what time is it there? Drop it in the comments. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You find yourself standing at the grand imposing gates, the very entrance to a world governed by an almost impossibly complex web of rules. These aren't just suggestions. They are the bedrock of society, the very air that courtiers breathe. Your heart quickens slightly as you observe the guards, stoic and unmoving their gazes, sweeping across the courtyard with an almost unsettling intensity. They wear their distinctive uniforms, the dark fabric providing a stark contrast to the vivid palace architecture. You notice the intricate details on their helmets, the way their weapons are held, not casually but with a disciplined readiness that speaks volumes about the constant vigilance required within these walls. You quickly realize that even before you've stepped inside, you are already being judged, assessed, and categorized. Every nuance of your posture, the way you carry yourself, the very direction of your gaze, all of it is being absorbed, processed, and filed away by unseen eyes. This initial encounter is your first test, a silent, unwritten examination of your understanding of this brutal new reality. As you tentatively approach, you notice a subtle shift in the air, a palpable sense of reverence that permeates everything. It's not just about bowing, it's about understanding the hierarchy, the invisible lines of power that crisscross the entire court. You see a low-ranking official, perhaps a minor clerk, practically melting into the ground as a high-ranking minister sweeps past an entourage of servants, trailing behind him like a quiet, living shadow. The minister doesn't even acknowledge the clerk's existence, his gaze fixed straight ahead, embodying an almost divine indifference. This, you quickly learn, is the norm. To expect recognition from someone of higher status is not just presumptuous, it's a profound misunderstanding of the social order. Your own instincts, honed by a modern world where individual recognition is often prized, are screaming at you to make eye contact, to offer a polite nod. But you quickly suppress them, realizing that such actions would be not only futile, but potentially disastrous. Your first lesson in Joseon etiquette comes swiftly and without mercy. You observe a young man clearly new to the court, perhaps a newly appointed scholar. He approaches an elder official, his movements a little too eager, his bow a fraction too shallow, and worst of all, he speaks before being addressed. The elder official, without a word, simply turns his back. The young man's face, a moment ago filled with earnestness, crumples into a mask of mortification. He doesn't understand the nuance, the unspoken rule that dictates that the lower-ranked must never initiate an interaction with the superior unless explicitly invited to do so. It's a subtle but critical distinction, and one that will be drilled into you often through public humiliation, or if you're truly unfortunate, something far worse. You notice the rigid separation of spaces. The main thoroughfares of the palace are wide and open, designed to accommodate the grand processions and the movement of numerous officials. But tucked away behind ornate walls and through guarded gateways are the more private areas, the royal residences, the queen's quarters, the king's study. To even accidentally wander into these forbidden zones without explicit permission is an unforgivable offense, a transgression that implies not just disrespect, but a direct threat to the royal personage. You begin to understand that your world, once boundless, is now meticulously segmented, each area carrying its own set of unwritten rules and potentially severe consequences. One of the most immediate and startling aspects of Joseon court life is the absence of personal space. You are always observed, always within the sphere of influence of others. Even when you believe you are alone, a servant, a guard, or another courtier might be just out of sight, listening, watching. This constant surveillance fosters an atmosphere of extreme self-awareness. Every gesture, every facial expression, even the subtle shift of your weight becomes a performance. There is no room for genuine spontaneity, no moment where you can truly let your guard down. This is perhaps one of the most brutal aspects for a modern mind to grasp: the complete erosion of individual privacy and the constant pressure to maintain a facade of perfect composure. The language itself is a minefield of politeness levels and honorifics. You overhear conversations catching snippets of speech, and you realize that the words themselves change depending on who is speaking to whom. The same verb can have dozens of different forms, each denoting a specific level of respect or lack thereof between the speaker and the listener. To use the wrong honorific is not just a grammatical error. It's an insult, a declaration of disrespect that can have serious repercussions. Imagine trying to navigate a conversation where every single word carries the weight of social hierarchy. It's like learning a new language where every single phrase is also a complex mathematical equation, and getting it wrong means you've just declared war. You also become acutely aware of the importance of stillness. In a world where every movement is scrutinized, excessive fidgeting, nervous gestures, or even an overly animated discussion can be seen as a sign of instability, disrespect, or even subversive thoughts. Courtiers learn to stand, sit, and move with an almost serene calm, their bodies betraying little of their inner turmoil. This controlled demeanor is a testament to their mastery of courtly etiquette, a physical manifestation of their self-control, and their understanding of their place within the grand scheme of things. It's a subtle form of communication, a silent declaration of one's adherence to the rigid norms. One curious detail you might observe is the way the courtiers handle their personal belongings. Nothing is ever left carelessly. Scrolls are meticulously rolled, writing brushes are placed with precision, and even a simple fan is held with a deliberate elegance. This meticulousness extends to every aspect of their lives, a constant reinforcement of the idea that everything has its proper place, its proper order. This extends to personal hygiene, which, while not as overtly public, is still paramount. Historians still debate whether certain ancient Joseon beauty practices, like the use of specialized cleansing powders made from grains and herbs, were purely aesthetic, or also had a significant ritualistic component tied to the purity expected of those in the royal court. You can almost smell the subtle fragrances of the expensive perfumed oils used by the higher-ranking officials, a stark contrast to the more earthy scents of the common people outside the palace walls. The concept of face is another crucial element you quickly grasp. Losing face for yourself or for your family is a fate worse than death for many. This means that public displays of anger, shame, or despair are almost never seen among high-ranking officials. Even in moments of intense personal tragedy or professional setback, there is an expectation of unwavering composure. Emotions are bottled, hidden behind serene expressions and carefully modulated voices. This creates an atmosphere of almost chilling politeness, where true feelings are rarely revealed and veiled criticisms or subtle threats are delivered with an almost surgical precision. It's a game of masks where everyone is constantly performing, constantly guarding their inner thoughts and emotions. You realize that even the most seemingly innocuous objects within the palace hold symbolic meaning. The intricate carvings on a wooden pillar, the specific color of a roof tile, the placement of a stone lantern in a garden, Each element contributes to a larger narrative of power tradition and cosmic order. The Joseon court was not just a collection of buildings, it was a carefully constructed universe designed to reflect and reinforce the king's divine mandate and the strict hierarchical order of society. To understand the etiquette, you must also begin to understand this underlying symbolism, to read the unspoken language of the palace itself. It's like walking into a living museum, where every artifact, every brushstroke, every piece of furniture is shouting subtle messages about who you are, where you belong, and what is expected of you. It's a bit like modern interior design, except instead of saying, "I like minimalism," it's saying, "I am a high-ranking official with impeccable taste and a deep understanding of Confucian principles." As you spend more time observing, you begin to appreciate the sheer volume of unwritten rules. These aren't codified in books. They are passed down through generations learned through observation correction and often painful experience. They are the subtle gestures, the appropriate silences, the precise timing of a bow, the exact distance to maintain from a superior. It's an overwhelming amount of information to absorb, and you realize that even the most intelligent and well-meaning individual could easily make a fatal error. This system, while seemingly designed to maintain order, also serves as a constant test, weeding out those who lack the keen observational skills, the discipline, or perhaps the sheer luck required to survive within its brutal embrace. The palace itself, a sprawling complex of halls, courtyards, and gardens, seems to breathe with its own set of rules. You learn that certain pathways are reserved for the king and his immediate retinue, while others are designated for specific ranks of officials. To cross an unpermitted threshold even by accident is not merely a breach of protocol. It's an act of lèse majesté, a direct affront to the king's authority. The very ground beneath your feet is imbued with hierarchical significance. You see servants scurrying through less prominent routes, heads bowed almost invisible against the vast backdrop of the palace walls. This isn't just about efficiency, it's about maintaining the visual order, reinforcing the clear divisions between ruler and ruled noble and commoner. It's a bit like knowing which lane to take on a highway, except if you pick the wrong lane, you don't just get a ticket. You might get a one-way trip to a very unpleasant place. You also come to understand the paramount importance of titles and addresses. Simply calling someone by their given name, unless you are of intimate relation and higher status, is unthinkable. Every individual from the lowest eunuch to the highest minister has a specific title that must be used, often coupled with an honorific that denotes respect. To err in this regard is not just impolite, it's a direct challenge to their status and, by extension, to the entire system of hierarchy. It's a constant mental exercise, a linguistic tightrope walk, where one wrong step can send you plummeting into social disgrace. This focus on precise address is a common historical fact across many East Asian courts, but the Joseon emphasis on it was particularly stringent. And finally, you begin to internalize the concept of filial piety, hyo in Korean, which extends far beyond the family unit into the very fabric of court life. Your duty to your superiors, to the king, and to the state is an extension of the same reverence and obedience you would show your parents. This deep-seated Confucian principle underpins much of the court's etiquette. Disrespecting a superior is not just a personal slight, it's a violation of a fundamental moral and cosmic order. This is why the punishments for breaches of etiquette are often so severe. They are seen not just as individual transgressions, but as threats to the very foundations of Joseon society. It's a heavy burden, a constant reminder that your individual existence is subservient to the collective good and the established order. The constant pressure to uphold these values, to embody the ideal of filial piety in every action, weighs heavily on even the most seasoned courtier. You've survived your initial observations, perhaps even managed to blend into the background. A small victory in a place where remaining unnoticed can be a form of self-preservation. But now you're about to delve deeper into the intricate dance of deference and authority that defines every interaction within the Joseon court. It's a performance where every bow, every gesture, every spoken word carries immense weight, dictating not just your immediate fate, but potentially the fate of your entire lineage. This isn't just about good manners. It's about acknowledging and reinforcing the immutable order of the universe with the king at its absolute center. Imagine for a moment the sheer physical toll of constant deference. You're expected to bow deeply and respectfully to anyone of higher rank, and given the layered hierarchy that means almost everyone, your back begins to ache, your knees protest, but you dare not straighten too soon nor linger too long. There's a precise angle, a specific duration, a nuanced difference between a bow to a minor official and one to a royal prince. It's an unspoken language of the body understood by all, and a single misinterpretation can spell disaster. You see a courtier, perhaps a bit too eager to impress, execute a bow that is just a fraction too deep for the person he is greeting. It's almost imperceptible, but the recipient's eyes narrow ever so slightly. That tiny error broadcasts an almost desperate obsequiousness, suggesting insincerity, or worse, a subtle form of mockery. It's like using a too enthusiastic emoji in a formal email. It just doesn't land right. The most terrifying of all interactions, of course, is with the king himself. You are taught that merely being in his presence is an immense privilege, one that demands absolute and unwavering respect. When the king walks, all conversation ceases, heads are bowed so low, your forehead practically brushes the polished stone floor, and you dare not make eye contact. To look directly at the king, even for a fleeting moment, is considered an act of defiance, a challenge to his divine authority. It's as if his gaze holds a power that could scorch your very soul. You quickly internalize this fear, feeling an almost primal urge to avert your eyes, to shrink yourself into insignificance whenever the royal procession approaches. Consider the royal audience a ceremony steeped in brutal formality. You stand perhaps for hours in a vast courtyard exposed to the elements, waiting for the king to appear. Your posture must be impeccable, your face a mask of serene anticipation. No fidgeting, no whispering, no visible signs of discomfort. When the king finally emerges, heralded by the solemn beat of drums and the mournful sound of trumpets, a collective intake of breath ripples through the assembly. You prostrate yourself face pressed to the ground, listening for his voice which will grant permission to rise. Only then, with extreme caution, do you slowly lift your head, still careful to avoid direct eye contact. This intense ritual serves a clear purpose: to reinforce the king's absolute power and to remind every single person in the court of their complete subservience. It's a masterful piece of psychological conditioning, leaving no doubt as to who holds all the cards. The concept of speaking up is also turned on its head. In modern society, we're encouraged to express our opinions, to contribute to discussions. In the Joseon court, offering an unsolicited opinion, especially to a superior, is a grave breach of etiquette. You speak only when spoken to, and even then your responses must be carefully worded, deferential and often vague enough to avoid committing yourself to a potentially controversial stance. To directly contradict a superior, even if you are absolutely certain they are wrong, is an act of unthinkable insolence. Instead, you learn the art of the veiled suggestion, the indirect query, the subtle hint that allows the superior to discover the correct answer on their own, thus preserving their face and, by extension, your own. It's a diplomatic tightrope walk where saying too much or too little can both lead to ruin. Punishments for breaches of etiquette were not merely disciplinary. They were often public spectacles designed to instill fear and reinforce the strict social order. A common punishment for a relatively minor infraction might be flogging, a brutal public lashing that not only inflicted physical pain but also carried immense social stigma. Your reputation, your family's honor would be irrevocably tainted. For more severe offenses, banishment to a remote, desolate island or region was a real possibility. You would lose everything: your position, your wealth, your connections, and likely live out your days in poverty and isolation. And for the gravest transgressions, those that challenged the king's authority or the stability of the state, execution was a very real threat. Historians still debate the precise number of courtiers who met their end due to seemingly minor etiquette infractions, but the psychological impact of this constant threat was undeniable. You might notice the meticulous way documents and correspondence are handled. A letter from a superior is received with both hands, a slight bow, and never opened casually. The ink, the paper, the calligraphy, all are judged. A poorly written character, a smudged seal, or an inappropriately folded document can be seen as a sign of disrespect or sloppiness, reflecting poorly on the sender, and by extension on the recipient if they accept it without due care. This attention to detail extends to all written communication, a constant reminder that formality and precision are paramount in every aspect of court life. It's not just about what you say, but how it's presented, almost like the packaging of a very delicate and dangerous gift. The rigid class system based on the Neo-Confucian principles that permeated Joseon society was explicitly reflected in court etiquette. Every individual was born into a specific social stratum: the royal family, the young aristocracy, the commoners, and the lowborn. While some social mobility was possible through the rigorous civil service examinations, the vast majority remained in their assigned place. This meant that your very identity dictated the proper form of address, the appropriate level of deference you were owed, and the specific etiquette you were expected to observe. It was a societal blueprint, etched into every interaction, a constant reinforcement of who you were, and more importantly, who you were not. Even sitting arrangements were a highly choreographed affair. In formal gatherings, individuals would be seated according to their rank with the highest officials closest to the king. To mistakenly sit in a position reserved for someone of higher status was not just an awkward mistake. It was a deliberate usurpation of authority, a brazen challenge to the established order. You quickly learn to assess the subtle cues, the placement of cushions, the type of mat, the distance from the main platform, to ensure you never committed such a grievous error. It's like a deadly game of musical chairs where the wrong seat could send you to the gallows instead of just out of the game. The concept of indirect communication is a masterclass in subtle manipulation. You learn to speak in metaphors and allusions to hint at your true meaning rather than stating it directly. This allows both parties to save face to avoid direct confrontation and to maintain an illusion of harmony even when deep disagreements simmer beneath the surface. It's a bit like a complex game of charades where everyone understands the unspoken rules and only the most astute players truly grasp the hidden messages. This is especially true when discussing sensitive topics or delivering bad news. You would never simply say, "The harvest failed." Instead, you might lament, "The heavens have been ungenerous this season and the fields weep from thirst." This allows the king to absorb the grim reality without the messenger directly bringing forth the blunt, potentially insulting truth. You observe the meticulous care given to the king's personal items. His robes, his writing implements, his dining utensils. All are treated with an almost sacred reverence. No one, not even the highest-ranking minister, would dare to touch them without explicit permission. These objects are extensions of the king himself, imbued with his authority and dignity. To disrespect an object belonging to the king is to disrespect the king directly, a transgression that could be met with extreme prejudice. This level of veneration extends to his personal space as well. Imagine a servant meticulously cleaning the royal chambers, every movement precise, every cloth chosen with care, knowing that the slightest dust mote could be considered an affront. The role of the eunuchs and palace maids in enforcing and observing etiquette is particularly fascinating. These individuals, often unseen and unheard by the outside world, formed the backbone of the palace's internal workings. They were not merely servants, they were living embodiments of the court's strict protocols, trained from a young age to navigate its complexities. They were the silent witnesses to every interaction, their eyes and ears constantly attuned to breaches of etiquette. A subtle report from a trusted eunuch could seal a courtier's fate, making them both indispensable and terrifying figures within the palace walls. They are the quiet enforcers, the human CCTV of the Joseon court, always watching, always remembering. One popular historical debate among scholars revolves around the extent to which the Joseon court's rigid etiquette stifled creativity and intellectual discourse. Some argue that the constant pressure to conform and avoid offense led to a stagnant intellectual environment, while others contend that it simply redirected intellectual energy into highly nuanced and indirect forms of expression, leading to a unique flourishing of art and literature. You see both sides of this argument playing out around you, the stifling formality, but also the subtle beauty in the intricate poetry and calligraphy produced by scholars who had to convey profound ideas within the strictest of boundaries. It makes you wonder how many brilliant minds were lost to the system, and how many learned to thrive within its confines, their genius expressed in whispers and hidden meanings. Ultimately, you come to realize that the brutality of Joseon court etiquette wasn't about malice, at least not always. It was a meticulously constructed system refined over centuries, designed to maintain order, stability, and the absolute authority of the king, in a society that valued harmony above all else. Every rule, no matter how seemingly trivial, served a purpose in reinforcing the hierarchy and preventing chaos. It was a machine finely tuned and unforgiving, and you, as a living cog within it, were expected to perform your designated function flawlessly or risk being ground to dust. Having navigated the treacherous waters of deference and the unspoken rules of royal presence, you now face a challenge that seems on the surface less dangerous, but is in fact equally fraught with peril: the brutal etiquette of Joseon fashion. In this court, your clothing isn't just a matter of personal taste or comfort, it's a meticulously crafted statement of your identity, your rank, your marital status, and even your intentions. Every thread, every color, every accessory is a silent declaration, and a single fashion faux pas could unravel your entire standing, leading to whispers, ridicule, or even more severe consequences. It's a bit like showing up to a black tie gala in a Hawaiian shirt, except in Joseon that mistake could get you blacklisted for life or worse. You quickly discover that the Joseon wardrobe is a complex code of conduct woven into fabric. The most immediate and striking aspect is the color. Deep, vibrant colors like royal yellow, reserved exclusively for the king, or rich purples and reds, are worn only by the highest-ranking officials and members of the royal family. As someone of lower standing, you are relegated to more subdued hues, muted blues, grays, and browns. To wear a color above your station is not just tacky, it's a direct challenge to the established hierarchy, an arrogant display of ambition that will be swiftly noted and remembered. You might see a new official, perhaps recently promoted, sporting a slightly brighter shade of blue than is truly appropriate for his current rank. He thinks he's making a statement of success, but to the seasoned courtiers, he's merely broadcasting his lack of understanding and perhaps his dangerous hubris. It's like wearing a five-star general's uniform when you're just a private. It won't earn you respect, only suspicion. The fabric itself also speaks volumes. Luxurious silks, intricately embroidered with auspicious symbols like dragons, phoenixes, or clouds, are the exclusive domain of the royal family and the highest nobility. You, on the other hand, are likely clad in less opulent materials. Fine cotton, perhaps, or a simpler silk. The quality of the weave, the sheen of the material, the intricate patterns, all are subtle indicators of one's social standing. To even attempt to mimic the fabric choices of a superior is seen as an act of pretense, an attempt to elevate oneself beyond one's rightful place. You might catch a glimpse of a noblewoman's hanbok, the traditional Korean dress made of shimmering, iridescent silk. Each movement catching the light while your own garments feel sturdy and practical by comparison. This visual disparity is a constant reminder of the societal divisions. Then there's the cut and style of the garments. The dopo, a wide-sleeved overcoat, is a common sight among officials, but its specific details, the width of the sleeves, the length of the skirt, the precise fold of the collar, can subtly differentiate between ranks. Even the hats are critical. The gat, the iconic horsehair hat, varies significantly in shape and size depending on the wearer's status. A high-ranking official's gat might be broader and more elaborate, perhaps adorned with specific ornaments. To wear a hat that signifies a rank higher than your own is an immediate and undeniable breach of protocol, a visual lie that invites correction, often quite publicly. You learn to recognize these subtle differences instinctively, a crucial skill for navigating the social landscape. Accessories are another minefield. Belts, for instance, are not merely functional. High-ranking officials might wear elaborate jade or gold belts, while lower officials are restricted to simpler materials like horn or wood. The ornaments attached to these belts, such as small pouches, perfume holders, or decorative knives, also adhere to strict guidelines. Even the shoes you wear, the material they are made from, and their design communicate your status. It's an unspoken rule that your entire ensemble from head to toe must be a harmonious reflection of your precise position within the court. This almost obsessive attention to detail is a hallmark of Joseon court etiquette. Everything must be in its appointed place. Consider the role of hair and makeup. For women, elaborate hairstyles often involving intricate braids, decorative pins, bigneo, and specific ornaments are not just about beauty. They are indicators of marital status and social rank. A married woman's hair might be styled differently than an unmarried woman's, and the materials of her hairpins, gold, silver, jade, would reflect her family's wealth and standing. For men, while less elaborate, the length of their hair traditionally kept long and tied up in a top knot, and the type of headwear worn were equally significant. To appear disheveled or to ignore these strictures is seen as a sign of disrespect for oneself and for the court. One fascinating, albeit somewhat obscure historical detail is the Joseon court's use of specific facial powders for different skin tones and social classes, with higher-ranking individuals often preferring a more ethereal pale complexion achieved through finely milled rice powder. You quickly realize that a crucial aspect of this sartorial code is its immutability. Fashion trends as we understand them simply don't exist here in the same way. The style of dress has been dictated by tradition for centuries, and any deviation, no matter how subtle, is seen as a dangerous innovation, a challenge to the stability of the established order. This means no bold personal statements, no edgy fashion choices. You are expected to conform to blend into the visually harmonious, hierarchical tapestry of the court. Any attempt to stand out to express individuality through dress is almost certainly a sign of a rebellious spirit, which is about the last thing you want to be accused of in the Joseon court. It's like being forced to wear the exact same uniform every day, year after year, with any deviation being an act of treason. Scholars often debate the economic implications of such rigid dress codes. Some argue that it ensured a certain level of social stability by visually reinforcing the class system, making it clear who was who. Others contend that it stifled economic innovation in the textile and fashion industries, focusing production on traditional forms rather than encouraging new designs. You see the evidence of both the clear order but also the potential for immense waste as fine fabrics and elaborate craftsmanship were constantly consumed to maintain this visual hierarchy rather than being used for more practical or innovative purposes. Even when outside the official court traveling or engaging in less formal settings, the etiquette of dress still applies. You are expected to maintain a certain level of decorum in your attire, even if it's not the full court regalia. This means no casual clothes in public, no appearing disheveled. Your personal presentation is a constant reflection of your loyalty to the ideals of the Joseon Dynasty, a visual pledge of allegiance to the very system that governs your life. It's a 24/7 commitment to embodying your status. Imagine the psychological pressure of constantly being under this sartorial microscope. Every time you dress, every time you step out, you are acutely aware that your appearance is being judged, weighed, and interpreted. There's no room for a bad hair day or throwing on whatever's comfortable. Every morning is a meticulous ritual of self-presentation, a strategic decision about how to communicate your respect for the hierarchy and avoid any inadvertent offense. This pressure permeates every aspect of your public life, making even the simplest act of getting dressed a performative art. The seasonal changes also bring their own set of etiquette rules for clothing. Specific materials and layers are prescribed for different times of the year, not just for comfort, but for propriety. Wearing summer silk in the depths of winter or thick padded garments during a warm spring day would be seen as an eccentricity at best, or a sign of poor judgment and disrespect for the natural order at worst. You'd be that person sweating profusely in their winter coat in April, all because the calendar dictates it's still winter fabric season. It's about aligning yourself not just with the court, but with the very rhythms of nature, reflecting the Confucian ideal of harmony. One subtle, often overlooked aspect of this clothing etiquette is the state of cleanliness and repair. Even if your garments are of the appropriate color and cut for your rank, any visible stains, tears, or signs of disrepair are considered utterly unacceptable. It implies sloppiness, a lack of self-respect, and by extension, a disrespect for the court itself. Servants would meticulously clean and repair garments, ensuring that every courtier's attire was pristine. You might even see someone discreetly adjusting a fold or smoothing a wrinkle on their robe before an important meeting. A tiny, almost unconscious act born of years of rigorous training. It's a bit like making sure your car is sparkling clean before driving it to a job interview. It speaks volumes about your attention to detail and self-discipline. And of course, there are the specific garments for ritual ceremonies and official events. These are often even more ornate and prescribed than daily wear, with specific colors, designs, and accessories mandated for coronations, ancestral rites, or diplomatic receptions. To wear the wrong ceremonial attire or to wear it incorrectly is a profound offense, undermining the solemnity and legitimacy of the event itself. These are the equivalent of state uniforms, and every button, every medal must be perfectly placed. Consider the subtle yet powerful impact of silence in this sartorial world. Your clothes speak for you often more loudly than any words you could utter. They announce your position, your allegiances, your worth. This means that often a courtier need not introduce themselves or declare their rank. Their clothing does it for them. It creates an almost wordless communication system where status is visually evident and interactions are immediately shaped by this silent declaration. It also means that a sudden change in one's attire, either up or down, would immediately signal a shift in one's standing, a promotion, or a demotion without a single word needing to be spoken. It's a power uniform taken to an extreme. You've learned that the brutal etiquette of Joseon court fashion isn't about looking good in a modern sense. It's about looking right. It's about fitting seamlessly into a carefully constructed visual hierarchy, about constantly reaffirming your place and the place of everyone around you. It's a world where your clothes are your second skin, a constant public performance of your obedience and understanding of the ruthless social order. Every thread whispers a story, and you better make sure yours is the right one. You've mastered the art of the bow and navigated the treacherous waters of courtly fashion. Now prepare yourself for another arena where etiquette is brutally enforced, the Joseon royal banquet. This isn't just a meal. It's a meticulously choreographed spectacle, a grand performance of power, hierarchy, and ritual, where every dish, every sip, and every utterance holds profound significance. Forget your modern idea of a casual dinner party. This is a culinary minefield where one wrong bite could lead to a very bitter end. Imagine stepping into a grand hall, perhaps the Gyeonghoru Pavilion, its reflection shimmering on the serene pond. The air fragrant with exotic spices and the subtle scent of incense. The scene is one of breathtaking opulence. Intricate silk screens depicting mythical landscapes, golden vessels gleaming under the soft glow of lanterns, and servants moving with an almost otherworldly grace. But beneath this veneer of beauty lies an undercurrent of tension. Every courtier present, from the highest minister to the most junior scribe, is acutely aware that they are being observed, their table manners, their level of consumption, and their very demeanor constantly assessed. It's like being forced to eat a Michelin star meal with your strictest etiquette coach watching your every move, except the stakes are far, far higher than just a disapproving glance. The seating arrangement alone is a brutal lesson in hierarchy. The king, of course, occupies the most prominent position, usually elevated on a platform or seated at a distinct central table. Around him, in concentric circles or carefully arranged rows, sit the royal family, then the highest-ranking officials descending in order of status. To even consider sitting in a spot not explicitly designated for your rank is an act of outrageous presumption and immediate challenge to the social order. You quickly learn to identify your precise place, guided by subtle cues like the design of the floor cushions, the type of table, or the specific proximity to the king's retinue. It's a silent, elaborate game of musical chairs where if you choose the wrong seat, the music might just stop for you permanently. Then there's the food itself. Joseon royal cuisine was an art form, a symphony of flavors, textures, and colors, often involving dozens of meticulously prepared dishes. But this abundance comes with its own set of rules. You are expected to partake in each dish, but only in moderation. To overindulge, especially in a particular favorite, is seen as gluttony, a lack of self-control, and potentially a sign of greed. To eat too little, however, might imply disdain for the king's generosity or worse, a secret illness or disloyalty. The quantity you consume is a delicate balance, a quiet negotiation between politeness and caution. The utensils you use are also governed by strict etiquette. Traditional Joseon meals are eaten with chopsticks and a spoon, and the way you hold them, the way you bring food to your mouth, the precise movements of your hands, all are scrutinized. Dropping a utensil making a loud clatter, or using your chopsticks to point at someone are all major faux pas. You learn to eat slowly, deliberately, with an almost meditative focus on precision. And forget about talking with your mouth full. That's an unforgivable offense that would earn you the immediate silent contempt of everyone around you. One fascinating and somewhat unnerving aspect of royal dining was the ever-present concern about poisoning. While not explicitly a part of etiquette, the elaborate protocols around food preparation and serving often served as a subtle defense mechanism. Only trusted individuals were allowed in the royal kitchens, and every dish presented to the king would undergo rigorous testing, often by tasters, before he would even consider touching it. You might witness a royal taster, typically a eunuch or a trusted court lady, delicately sampling each dish before it reaches the king's table, their faces betraying no emotion, even as they perform this potentially fatal duty. This underlying tension, though rarely spoken of, adds another layer of gravity to the seemingly convivial atmosphere of a banquet. The act of toasting or offering drinks is also highly ritualized. If you are offered a drink by a superior, you must receive it with both hands, bow slightly, and then before drinking, perform a series of gestures that demonstrate respect and gratitude. The order in which toasts are offered, who initiates them, and the precise words used are all carefully prescribed, reflecting the intricate hierarchy of the court. To refuse a drink unless you have a legitimate and well-explained reason is a profound insult. To offer a toast out of turn or to use informal language is an act of blatant disrespect. It's a bit like a complex drinking game where if you get the rules wrong, you don't just take a shot, you might lose your head. Historians often debate the extent to which these elaborate dining rituals were truly about food versus being about a performative display of power. Some argue that the sheer complexity and formality served to awe and intimidate foreign dignitaries and reinforce the king's unchallenged authority within the court. Others contend that these rituals were deeply rooted in Confucian principles of order, harmony, and filial piety, reflecting a reverence for both the king and the bounty provided by nature. You can see how both interpretations hold weight as you experience the intricate dance of the banquet, where every movement feels imbued with both strategic intent and ancient tradition. Even the conversation during a royal banquet is tightly controlled. While quiet conversation among those of similar rank is generally permitted, loud laughter, boisterous arguments or discussions of inappropriate topics are strictly forbidden. The king often initiates conversations, and your responses must be concise, deferential, and relevant. To interrupt the king or to dominate the conversation is an unthinkable breach of decorum. It's a setting where silence often speaks louder than words, and where measured responses are far more valued than witty repartee. The removal of dishes also follows a strict order, with plates being cleared systematically, often by rank, ensuring that no one feels slighted or rushed. And at the conclusion of the meal, the process of departure is as meticulously choreographed as the entrance. You don't simply stand up and leave. There are specific bows, farewells, and a prescribed order of exit, always ensuring that the king and the highest-ranking officials depart first, followed by others in descending order of status. To try and sneak out early or to leave before your designated rank is permitted would be a clear sign of disrespect and a dangerous disregard for protocol. You might observe a specific custom, where at times the king might personally offer a portion of food or drink to a favored minister or guest. This act, known as sagyok, is an immense honor, a public display of royal favor. The recipient would typically prostrate themselves. Receive the offering with profound gratitude and consume it with utmost reverence. This is not just a gesture of generosity. It's a powerful tool of patronage and loyalty, cementing bonds and reinforcing the king's position as the ultimate dispenser of grace. It's the ultimate king's treat, and you'd be a fool to decline. The entertainment during a royal banquet, often involving music, dance, and poetry, is also carefully curated and presented. Even as you enjoy the performances, you are expected to maintain a dignified demeanor. Applauding too loudly, making overly enthusiastic comments, or showing any sign of boisterous enjoyment could be seen as undignified or even insulting to the performers or the king. The appreciation is subtle, a quiet nod, a gentle smile, a thoughtful posture. It's about appreciating art with reserved elegance, not a raucous rock concert. Finally, the cleanup after a royal banquet is also a significant event. Every vessel, every utensil, every piece of fabric is meticulously collected, cleaned, and stored. Nothing is left to chance, reinforcing the idea that even after the guests have departed, the order and precision of the court must be maintained. This attention to post-event detail underlines the fact that every aspect of court life is a performative act from start to finish. In the Joseon court, dining isn't just about nourishing the body, it's about nourishing the intricate web of social relations, reinforcing power structures, and constantly reminding everyone of their precise place within the grand hierarchy. It's a meal where your appetite for power is just as important as your appetite for food, and where a single slip of the tongue or the chopstick could be your last. You've learned to bow, dress, and even eat with the precision of a master courtier. Now, prepare to step into the most elusive and often brutal realm of the Joseon court, the inner courts. This is the private world of the king, the queen, the royal concubines, and their attendants. A realm of veiled power, hidden rivalries, and an etiquette so strict it could suffocate. Unlike the outer court where men dominated, the inner court was largely a woman's domain, a gilded cage where beauty, lineage, and cunning were the ultimate currencies. It's like a reality TV show, but with far more rigid rules and much higher stakes. As you step beyond the formal audience halls and into the secluded courtyards of the inner palace, the atmosphere palpably shifts. The air becomes heavy with the scent of expensive incense, blooming flowers, and sometimes the faint, cloying smell of jealousy. Here, the colors are softer, the sounds more muted, but the tension is perhaps even greater. The etiquette is not about public displays of power, but about subtle maneuvers, whispered alliances, and the constant unspoken competition for the king's favor. You realize that a woman's entire existence, her security, and the future of her family hinges on her ability to navigate this treacherous landscape. The queen reigns supreme in this world, her position sacrosanct, yet constantly under threat. Her etiquette is the benchmark for all other women in the inner court. She moves with an almost regal stillness, her elaborate handbag flowing around her like a living sculpture. Every gesture, every facial expression is carefully controlled. To betray emotion, especially anger or frustration, is seen as a sign of weakness, an invitation for rivals to exploit. You observe her interactions with other court ladies, polite, distant, yet filled with an unspoken power dynamic. Her very presence commands absolute deference, and even the highest-ranking concubine must bow deeply in her presence, acknowledging her supreme status. The royal concubines, on the other hand, exist in a delicate balance. Their status depends entirely on the king's affection, and crucially on their ability to bear sons. Their etiquette is a constant performance of grace, beauty, and quiet ambition. They must be alluring enough to attract the king's attention, yet modest enough not to appear overtly manipulative. Their interactions with each other are a masterclass in passive aggression and veiled rivalry. A seemingly innocent compliment can carry a hidden sting. A polite inquiry can mask a probing investigation into a rival's vulnerabilities. It's a subtle war waged with smiles and whispers, where victory is measured in nights spent with the king and the birth of a healthy male heir. The hierarchy among concubines is brutally enforced. A concubine who has given birth to a royal prince holds a significantly higher status than one who has only borne daughters or none at all. Their living quarters, the number of their attendants, the quality of their silks, all reflect their standing. To treat a higher-ranking concubine with anything less than absolute deference is an act of blatant disrespect, inviting swift and often harsh retribution. You might see a concubine recently elevated due to the birth of a prince walk with a subtly more confident stride, while another whose star is fading appears almost invisible. The palace maids and eunuchs are the silent witnesses and enforcers of this inner court etiquette. They serve as the eyes and ears of the various factions, carrying messages, observing interactions, and sometimes acting as unwitting pawns in the complex power struggles. Their own lives are governed by an even stricter set of rules, their loyalty constantly tested. A maid who inadvertently overhears a sensitive conversation, or a eunuch who mishandles a confidential message could face severe punishment, even death. They are trained to be invisible, to anticipate needs without being asked, and to maintain an unwavering silence about the affairs of the royal family. It's a tough gig where getting too involved or not involved enough could cost you everything. One particularly brutal aspect of inner court etiquette concerns childbirth and succession. For a royal woman, bearing a male heir is not just a personal joy, it is a political imperative. The ceremonies surrounding pregnancy and childbirth are steeped in ancient rituals and strict protocols designed to ensure the health of the mother and the purity of the royal line. A concubine who successfully bears a prince gains immense power and status, while one who fails to produce an heir or only bears daughters risks falling into obscurity or even being cast aside. The pressure is immense, a constant weight that dictates much of a woman's life in the inner court. Historians still debate the true extent of the influence wielded by royal concubines in Joseon politics. While officially subservient to the queen and the king, many accounts suggest that clever and politically astute concubines could, through subtle influence and the strategic deployment of their sons, impact state affairs significantly. They were often the unseen hand behind the throne, their power operating within the rigid confines of etiquette, using flattery, persuasion, and the quiet manipulation of alliances to achieve their goals. It's a testament to the ingenuity of these women who found ways to exert power even when overtly denied it. The etiquette of communication within the inner court is a masterclass in indirection. Direct confrontation is rare. Instead, messages are conveyed through intermediaries, through subtle gestures, through the careful choice of gifts, or through seemingly innocent questions that carry deeper implications. Gossip, while officially forbidden, thrives in the shadows, a powerful currency exchanged in whispers. You learn to read between the lines, to interpret the unspoken, to understand that a smile can be a dagger and a sigh can be a declaration of war. It's like living in a perpetual spy novel where everyone has a hidden agenda, and trust is a luxury you can rarely afford. The daily routines of the inner court are also governed by strict protocols. The precise times for waking, dressing, eating, and sleeping are all regulated. The king's schedule dictates the flow of life for everyone. A concubine might spend hours preparing for a potential visit from the king, only for him to never appear or to choose another's chambers. This constant uncertainty, coupled with the rigid expectations, creates an atmosphere of anxious anticipation. There is no personal leisure time in the modern sense. Every moment is dedicated to the performance of one's role within the royal household. Consider the royal nursery. The care and upbringing of royal children, particularly princes, are subject to immensely strict etiquette. Wet nurses, nannies, and tutors are chosen with meticulous care, their backgrounds scrutinized, and their conduct constantly monitored. The interactions between royal children and their parents are often formal, dictated by strict rules of deference and respect. Even playful moments are often observed and guided by a rigid code of conduct, ensuring that the future rulers of Joseon are raised to understand their immense responsibilities and the unwavering demands of courtly life from their earliest days. You see young princes being taught to bow to their elders, to speak with proper honorifics, and to maintain a dignified demeanor, even when they would rather be playing. It's a childhood under a magnifying glass, preparing them for a life of constant scrutiny. The etiquette of mourning within the inner court is particularly elaborate and emotionally demanding. When a member of the royal family dies, the women of the inner court are expected to perform rituals of grief, often involving specific mourning clothes, periods of fasting, and prescribed wailing. While genuine grief is undoubtedly present, there is also an element of performance, a public display of sorrow that must adhere to strict traditional norms. To display insufficient grief could be seen as disrespect, while an overly dramatic display might be seen as insincere. It's a delicate balance between genuine emotion and ritualized performance. One fascinating detail, often lost in broader historical narratives, is the role of perfumes and cosmetics within the inner court. While beauty was highly valued, the use of certain scents or makeup could also carry unspoken messages. Some perfumes might be associated with particular seasons or occasions, and the application of certain cosmetic styles could subtly denote status or even a hopeful desire for the king's attention. It's a silent language of allure and aspiration where a carefully chosen floral scent might speak volumes that words dare not utter. Ultimately, the inner court of Joseon was a microcosm of the larger palace, but with an even greater emphasis on subtle power dynamics and personal survival. It was a world where beauty, intelligence, and family lineage were your only weapons, and where the most brutal rules were often unspoken, communicated through a glance, a whisper, or a perfectly executed yet utterly chilling smile. It's a reminder that power doesn't always roar. Sometimes it merely purrs right before it strikes. You've delved into the hushed, intricate world of the inner court, understanding that silence and subtlety are often more potent than direct confrontation. Now let's venture into another equally perilous arena, the art of courtly conversation. In Joseon, words are not merely tools for communication. They are weapons, shields, and delicate threads woven into the fabric of your reputation. A single misplaced word, an ill-timed jest, or an inappropriate tone can shatter alliances, invite suspicion, or even seal your doom. Forget witty banter. Here, every syllable is weighed with the gravity of consequence. It's like playing a high-stakes game of verbal chess, where one wrong move means checkmate for your career or worse. Imagine a formal gathering in a scholarly hall, the air thick with the scent of old paper and ink. You see esteemed scholars and high-ranking officials engaged in what appears to be polite discourse. But listen closely and you'll realize that the true meaning often lies not in what is said, but in what is not said. In the subtle nuances of delivery, the precise honorifics, and the carefully constructed layers of meaning. This is a masterclass in indirect communication, a skill perfected over centuries of navigating a world where directness could be fatal. The first and most brutal rule of courtly conversation is that you speak only when spoken to, especially to superiors. To interrupt, to interject, or to offer an unsolicited opinion is an act of breathtaking arrogance. When addressed, your response must be concise, deferential, and relevant to the query. You learn to answer questions with extreme caution, often providing just enough information to satisfy the query without revealing too much, or offering a definitive stance that could later be used against you. It's a verbal tightrope walk where every step must be meticulously calculated. Then there's the pervasive use of honorifics and humility markers. Every noun, every verb, every pronoun changes depending on who you are speaking to and about. Referring to yourself with overly humble terms and your superior with the highest honorifics is not just polite, it's a fundamental acknowledgement of the hierarchy. To err in this linguistic dance is not a simple grammatical mistake. It's a social transgression, an implicit challenge to the established order. You'd never say, "I think" to a minister. It would be something like, "This humble one dares to offer a thought if your esteemed wisdom permits." It's an exhausting, constant mental exercise far more complex than learning a foreign language. The art of flattery is another crucial skill, but it too is fraught with danger. Overly effusive or insincere praise can be seen as manipulative or even mocking. True flattery is subtle, woven into the fabric of a conversation, acknowledging a superior's wisdom, virtue, or accomplishments without being overtly sycophantic. It requires a keen understanding of the individual's personality and their desired image. You might praise a minister's deep understanding of ancient texts rather than their political prowess if you know they value scholarly achievements above all else. It's a delicate balance where the wrong kind of praise can backfire spectacularly. Conversely, delivering criticism or bad news is an even greater challenge. Direct criticism is almost always forbidden, especially when addressing a superior or the king. Instead, you learn the art of the veiled critique where you present a problem in a roundabout way, using metaphors, historical precedents, or hypothetical scenarios to allow the recipient to discover the issue themselves. You might describe the unfavorable alignment of stars, rather than explicitly stating, "The harvest failed due to your poor agricultural policies." This preserves the superior's face and protects the messenger from retribution. It's a complex dance around the truth where the message is conveyed without ever truly being spoken aloud. This indirectness is a common characteristic of many historical East Asian cultures, but Joseon took it to an art form. Scholars still vigorously debate whether this highly indirect communication fostered a more harmonious court environment or simply masked deeper resentments and made genuine problem-solving more difficult. Some argue that it prevented open conflict and maintained a facade of unity, while others contend that it led to a culture of unspoken grudges and dangerous misunderstandings. You witness both sides' moments of serene agreement and moments where you can almost feel the unspoken tension, the layers of hidden meaning simmering beneath polite smiles. Silence itself is a powerful tool in Joseon courtly conversation. Knowing when not to speak is as important as knowing what to say. In the presence of the king or a highly revered elder, prolonged silence is often a sign of profound respect and careful consideration. Filling every pause with chatter is seen as frivolous and disrespectful. You learn to listen intently to absorb the atmosphere and to only offer your words when they are truly necessary and carefully considered. It's like a deadly game of charades where the best players are often the quietest. The Joseon court also employed academic debates as a form of intellectual discourse, but even these were governed by strict rules. While scholars could engage in vigorous intellectual exchanges, personal attacks or disrespectful language were forbidden. The arguments had to be logical, well supported by classical texts, and delivered with proper decorum. These debates were often less about finding a definitive truth and more about demonstrating one's erudition, rhetorical skill, and adherence to Confucian principles. It's a bit like a formal debate club, but if you offend the judge, you could lose more than just the round. Gossip and rumor, while officially frowned upon, were an unavoidable part of court life and had their own brutal etiquette. You learn to listen carefully to discern truth from fabrication and to be extremely cautious about repeating anything you hear. Spreading false rumors about a superior or rival could lead to severe punishment, but ignoring important information could also leave you vulnerable. It's a dangerous tightrope walk where you need to be aware of the currents without being swept away by them. One fascinating and somewhat comical detail often overlooked is the subtle use of poetic allusions and classical references in everyday courtly conversation. High-ranking officials and scholars would often pepper their speech with lines from ancient poems or references to historical anecdotes. This wasn't just for intellectual display. It was a way to communicate complex ideas indirectly, to hint at opinions without explicitly stating them, or even to subtly critique a situation by drawing parallels to past events. It's a secret language understood by the elite, and if you didn't grasp the allusion, you were instantly marked as an outsider or, worse, uneducated. The concept of saving face permeates every verbal exchange. Your goal is always to ensure that both you and your interlocutor maintain dignity and avoid public humiliation. This means avoiding direct accusations, offering graceful ways out of awkward situations, and always allowing a superior to appear wise and in control. If a superior makes a mistake, you find ways to subtly correct it without ever making them lose face. It's a constant performance of mutual preservation of verbal ballet where everyone works to prevent a public fall. Even the tone of voice is crucial. A calm, measured tone is always preferred. Raising your voice speaking too quickly or betraying undue emotion is seen as a lack of self-control and an indicator of immaturity or unreliability. You learn to modulate your voice to speak with a gravitas that belies your inner thoughts, and to project an image of serene composure even when your heart is pounding. It's about projecting an aura of unflappable dignity no matter the internal turmoil. And of course, there's the particularly brutal etiquette surrounding royal decrees and commands. When the king speaks, there is no room for questioning, debate, or delay. His words are law. Your response is typically a solemn acknowledgement and an immediate, unquestioning obedience. To hesitate to argue or to express doubt is an act of treason, a direct challenge to the very foundation of his authority. It's the ultimate verbal command, and your only acceptable response is absolute compliance. In the Joseon court, words were never just words. They were instruments of power, carefully honed tools that could build reputations or tear them down. To navigate this world, you had to become a master of the unspoken, a connoisseur of nuance, and a silent observer of the subtle dance of communication. Your survival depended on it. You've navigated the verbal minefield of courtly conversation, learning that words are rarely what they seem. Now let's explore a seemingly benign aspect of Joseon court life that surprisingly also adhered to its own brutal code of etiquette royal recreation. Even in moments of leisure relaxation or personal enjoyment, the shadow of rigid protocol loomed large. Forget letting loose. Here, every game, every stroll, every artistic pursuit was a performance carefully observed and meticulously judged. It's like being at a company picnic where your boss is secretly grading your cornhole skills and your ability to network without appearing too eager. Imagine a serene afternoon in the royal gardens, perhaps the Who-won secret garden of Changdeokgung Palace, with its winding paths, tranquil ponds and ancient trees. You see courtiers seemingly enjoying a quiet moment, perhaps engaging in a game of jangy Korean chess or practicing their calligraphy. But watch closely and you'll notice an underlying tension. The laughter is subdued, the movements precise, and even in moments of apparent ease, the ever-present awareness of observation dictates every action. The choice of recreational activity itself was governed by etiquette. Certain pastimes were considered suitable for the literati and yangban aristocracy, such as scholarly pursuits like poetry composition painting, or playing musical instruments like the gayagyeom or geomungo. Engaging in activities deemed frivolous or common, such as gambling, which was strictly forbidden for officials, or overly boisterous physical games, would immediately lower your standing and reflect poorly on your character. It's about choosing a hobby that elevates your image, not undermines it. You might even observe a subtle competition during these leisurely activities. A particularly eloquent poem or a masterful stroke of the calligraphy brush could earn quiet admiration and subtly enhance one's reputation. Even within these approved activities, the manner of engagement was crucial. When playing jonggi, for instance, one was expected to maintain a calm, thoughtful demeanor, never to show frustration at a loss or excessive glee at a victory. Arguments over rules were unthinkable. The game was a display of intellectual prowess and composure, not raw competitive instinct. Similarly, during a poetry recital, one would listen with focused attention, offering only subtle nods of appreciation, never interrupting or making loud commentary. It's like attending a classical music concert where even a polite cough feels disruptive. Consider the act of strolling through the palace grounds. While seemingly a simple leisure activity, even this was imbued with strict protocol. High-ranking officials might walk with a measured pace, their servants trailing a respectful distance behind them. Lower-ranking individuals would need to maintain an awareness of their surroundings, stepping aside respectfully if a superior approached, avoiding eye contact, and never appearing to wander aimlessly or without purpose. You'd never see a minister jogging through the gardens for exercise. Every movement, even a leisurely one, was dignified and purposeful. The presence of attendants during leisure activities is another striking aspect. Even in private moments, courtiers rarely, if ever, found themselves truly alone. Servants, eunuchs, or palace maids were always nearby, ready to fetch a brush pour tea or simply stand by. This meant that even your most relaxed moments were, in a sense, public performances. There was no true solitude, no moment where the pressure of observation fully lifted. This constant surveillance naturally led to a highly self-aware demeanor, even in moments designated for recreation. It's like having a personal assistant attached to your hip 24/7, making sure you don't pick your nose. Historians often debate the psychological impact of such pervasive etiquette even during leisure. Some argue that it fostered a deeply disciplined and self-controlled populace, while others suggest it led to suppressed emotions and a lack of genuine personal expression. You see flashes of both the serene composure of a scholar meticulously painting, but also the fleeting, almost imperceptible sigh of a court lady, whose every moment, even in leisure, is prescribed. Hunting and archery, while often conducted outside the immediate palace grounds, also adhered to rigorous etiquette for royalty and the military elite. These were not just sports. They were displays of martial prowess, leadership, and precision. The king's hunts were grand ceremonial affairs involving specific formations, elaborate preparations, and strict rules for the participants. A misfired arrow or a failure to follow the prescribed hunting etiquette could be a public humiliation for a young nobleman reflecting poorly on his military skill and discipline. It's like an Olympic event where failing to hit the target means more than just losing points. It means losing face. Even seemingly simple pleasures like tea ceremonies were highly ritualized. The preparation of the tea, the pouring the offering, and the sipping, each step was performed with meticulous precision and grace. The conversation during a tea ceremony was typically quiet and contemplative, often revolving around philosophy, art, or the beauty of nature. This was not a time for loud gossip or boisterous laughter. It was a moment for quiet reflection and refined social interaction, where the etiquette of tranquility reigned supreme. You might notice the subtle way a courtier holds their cup, the gentle tilt of their wrist movements perfected through years of practice. The use of royal palanquins and sedans for travel within the palace grounds, even for short distances, was also bound by etiquette. The way one entered and exited the palanquin, the posture maintained while seated, and the precise route taken were all dictated by protocol reflecting the passenger's rank and the formality of the occasion. It reinforced the idea that even movement itself was a performative act, a visible manifestation of one's place in the hierarchy. It's like having a designated limo for every single movement, and you better get in and out correctly. A particularly unique and often overlooked historical detail is the etiquette surrounding royal portraiture. When the king or queen sat for a portrait, the entire process was imbued with solemn ritual. The artists who were highly skilled would often work in complete silence in an atmosphere of reverence. The royal subject would maintain a specific posture expression, and attire embodying the dignity and power of their office, even during the long, arduous sittings. This wasn't just about creating a likeness. It was about capturing and immortalizing an idealized image of rulership, a visual testament to their divine right. Finally, the etiquette of receiving gifts during moments of leisure or celebration was also highly significant. The way a gift was presented, the specific words used, and the humble acceptance by the recipient were all carefully choreographed. To accept a gift too eagerly or to show insufficient gratitude could be seen as a sign of greed or disdain. Conversely, to offer a gift that was inappropriate for the recipient's rank or too lavish for your own could be seen as disrespectful or an attempt at bribery. It's a delicate exchange where the value of the gift is often less important than the etiquette surrounding its presentation and acceptance. In the Joseon court, leisure was not an escape from etiquette. It was merely another stage upon which its rigid rules were performed. Every moment, every action, even an apparent relaxation, was a subtle reaffirmation of the social order, a quiet declaration of one's understanding and acceptance of the brutal world of the royal court. You've learned that even leisure in the Joseon court is a carefully managed performance. But now we delve into perhaps the most high-stakes arena of all succession, and the brutal etiquette surrounding the royal lineage. In a dynasty where the king's authority was absolute, the question of who would inherit the throne was paramount, and every birth, every illness, and every political maneuver became a life-or-death struggle dictated by an unyielding set of protocols. This isn't just about who gets the crown, it's about the very survival of the kingdom and countless lives. It's the ultimate Game of Thrones where the stakes are entire nations and the players are often children. Imagine the immense pressure placed upon the queen and royal concubines to bear sons. For the king, a male heir was not merely a personal desire but a cosmic imperative, ensuring the continuation of the dynasty and the stability of the realm. A queen who failed to produce a son might face immense criticism. Even being dethroned, her position potentially filled by a more fertile consort. The birth of a prince was heralded with elaborate ceremonies, prayers, and public celebrations, while the birth of a princess, though still welcomed, carried less weight for the succession. This inherent gender bias, deeply rooted in Joseon Confucianism, created an unspoken yet brutal competition among the women of the inner court, where a woman's value was often inextricably linked to her ability to produce male offspring. The etiquette of naming a royal prince was also deeply significant. The chosen name would carry auspicious meanings often related to prosperity, longevity, or wise rule, and would be selected after careful consultation with astrologers and scholars. This wasn't a casual decision, it was a profound act of destiny shaping, imbued with spiritual and political weight. You might observe the court astrologers poring over ancient texts, their faces etched with the gravity of their task, knowing that their recommendations would influence the future of the nation. Once a royal prince was born, his upbringing was a meticulous, rigid affair, governed by an even stricter set of rules than for other royal children. From infancy, he was surrounded by a carefully selected retinue of wet nurses, nannies, and eunuchs, all chosen for their impeccable backgrounds, loyalty, and strict adherence to court protocols. His every movement, every meal, every lesson was observed and dictated. Playtime, while permitted, was structured and often involved educational games or physical activities designed to hone his future leadership skills. There was no room for wild abandon. Every moment was a preparation for the weighty responsibilities of kingship. The selection of a crown prince Seja was perhaps the most crucial act of succession, and it was fraught with intense political maneuvering and strict etiquette. While usually the eldest son of the queen, this was not always guaranteed, especially if the queen was barren or if other concubines had more favored sons. The king's decision to name a crown prince would be announced in a grand, solemn ceremony, a public declaration that left no room for doubt or challenge. To question the king's choice even subtly was an act of rebellion often met with swift and brutal consequences. You'd see the subtle shifts in power, the sudden rise of one faction, the quiet despair of another, all hinging on this single pivotal announcement. Historians still intensely debate the power dynamics between the king and the crown prince. While the crown prince was heir apparent, he was still ultimately subservient to his father. The etiquette governing their interactions was designed to reinforce the king's supreme authority even over his own successor. The crown prince would bow deeply to his father, seek his counsel, and meticulously follow his instructions. Any sign of ambition, impatience, or even independent thought could be misinterpreted as a challenge to the king, leading to suspicion, disfavor, or in extreme cases, even the tragic death or forced abdication of the crown prince. Remember Crown Prince Saido, a stark, brutal example of how a father-son relationship entangled with political intrigue and rigid court expectations could lead to unimaginable tragedy. The education of the crown prince was an exhaustive and highly formalized process. Tutors selected from the most esteemed scholars would instruct him in Confucian classics, history, military strategy, and statecraft. Every lesson, every reading, every debate was designed to instill in him the virtues of a wise and benevolent ruler, while also preparing him for the complex realities of Joseon governance. The etiquette of learning was paramount respect for teachers' diligent study and a keen ability to absorb and apply knowledge. A prince who showed laziness or disrespect for his studies would immediately be seen as unfit to rule. Even the marriage of the crown prince was a deeply political affair, subject to intense scrutiny and ritual. The selection of the crown princess was not about love. It was about alliances, family prestige, and ensuring a suitable lineage for future kings. The wedding ceremony itself would be one of the grandest events of the dynasty, steeped in ancient customs and elaborate etiquette designed to legitimize the union and present the future queen to the nation. You'd witness the countless ceremonial details, the intricate robes, the symbolic offerings, each representing a facet of the immense responsibility being undertaken. The threat of regicide or usurpation was an ever-present, though often unspoken undercurrent in Joseon succession. The rigid etiquette, with its emphasis on loyalty and deference, was ultimately designed to prevent such challenges. Any courtier, noble, or even royal relative who harbored ambitions for the throne and failed to adhere to the strictest protocols could quickly find themselves accused of treason. The punishments for such offenses were swift and absolute, often extending to the perpetrator's entire family, a brutal deterrent against any form of disloyalty. This is where the politeness ends and the true chilling brutality begins. One unique historical detail is the extensive ritual surrounding the king's health and longevity. As the embodiment of the nation, the king's well-being was inextricably linked to the prosperity of Joseon. When the king fell ill, the court would engage in elaborate rituals, prayers, and sometimes even public acts of atonement, all performed with meticulous etiquette designed to appease the heavens and ensure his recovery. The crown prince in particular would be expected to display profound filial piety and concern, visiting his ailing father with solemn reverence and participating fully in the rituals for his recovery. Finally, the transition of power upon the king's death was a deeply solemn and highly ritualized process, guided by an intricate etiquette of mourning and ascension. The crown prince would perform elaborate mourning rites demonstrating his filial devotion before formally ascending the throne in a ceremony that mirrored the divine mandate of his ancestors. This transition, while inevitable, was a moment of immense vulnerability for the dynasty, and the strict adherence to protocol was seen as essential to maintain stability and legitimacy during a period of potential turmoil. It was a somber ballet where every step was designed to ensure the smooth, unchallenged transfer of immense power. The brutal etiquette of Joseon's succession wasn't just about preserving a lineage, it was about preserving the very fabric of the state. Every birth, every education, every political alliance was carefully managed, and every deviation from protocol carried the gravest consequences, serving as a constant chilling reminder that the path to the throne was paved with both immense power and unimaginable peril. You've witnessed the high stakes of succession where every royal breath was measured by the brutal etiquette of lineage. Now let's confront the final inevitable stage of life in the Joseon royal court: death and the afterlife's demands. Even in demise, the rigid protocols of Joseon society did not abate. In fact, they intensified, transforming mourning into an elaborate, weeks-long, even years-long spectacle of ritual and prescribed grief. Forget a simple funeral. Here, the journey to the afterlife was a meticulously choreographed performance, designed to honor the deceased, appease the spirits, and reinforce the enduring order of the living. It's like a meticulously planned state funeral, but with the added pressure of ensuring the deceased's eternal peace and the living's social standing. Imagine the sudden silence that descends upon the palace after the king's death. The vibrant colors of courtly life are replaced by somber white, the color of mourning. The air, once filled with the hushed sounds of daily routine, now carries the mournful wails of courtiers and the rhythmic chants of Buddhist monks or Confucian scholars. This initial period of grief is not merely personal. It is a public performative display of sorrow, a demonstration of filial piety and loyalty that everyone from the highest minister to the lowest servant is expected to participate in. To show insufficient grief or to deviate from the prescribed mourning rituals is a profound breach of etiquette, implying disrespect for the deceased monarch and, by extension, for the very institution of kingship. The mourning period for a king or queen was exceptionally long and rigorous, often spanning 2 to 3 years. During this time, courtiers and royal family members would adhere to strict regulations, wearing only plain white mourning clothes made of coarse hemp or cotton, abstaining from luxurious foods, music, and entertainment, and sometimes even living in temporary mourning huts near the royal tomb. The intensity of this mourning period reflected the paramount importance of the king, who was considered the direct link between heaven and earth. It was a societal pause, a collective act of deference to the departed soul. You would see high-ranking officials, their faces gaunt from fasting, performing countless bows before the provisional coffin, their every movement slow and deliberate, a testament to their unwavering loyalty. The preparation of the royal corpse for burial was an incredibly detailed and sacred ritual, involving specific purification rites, embalming techniques, and the dressing of the body in elaborate funeral attire, often consisting of many layers of silk robes. Only the most trusted and ritually pure individuals were allowed to handle the royal remains, their every action guided by ancient texts and specific protocols. This meticulous preparation was believed to ensure the deceased's peaceful transition to the afterlife, and to prevent any malevolent spirits from disturbing their eternal rest. It's a bit like an ancient sacred medical procedure where every detail matters for eternity. The construction of the royal tomb itself was a monumental undertaking governed by strict geomantic principles, pungsu. The location, orientation, and design of the tomb were believed to profoundly impact the prosperity of the living dynasty. Master geomancers would spend months, even years, searching for the most auspicious site, ensuring that the tomb harmonized with the natural landscape and channeled positive energy. The etiquette surrounding the construction involved countless rituals and ceremonies, from the blessing of the ground to the consecration of the burial chamber, each performed with utmost solemnity and precision. Any deviation from these protocols was believed to invite misfortune upon the kingdom. Historians still debate the specific interpretations of pungsu at different Joseon royal tombs, highlighting the complex interplay of science, superstition, and statecraft. The funeral procession was a grand, solemn spectacle designed to impress upon the populace the majesty of the deceased king and the continuity of the dynasty. Tens of thousands of people would line the streets witnessing the elaborate palanquin, carrying the royal coffin preceded by an honor guard, mourning officials, and an array of symbolic banners and ceremonial objects. The silence of the crowd, broken only by the mournful music and the shuffling of feet, was a testament to the awe and respect commanded by the royal death. Courtiers participating in the procession had to maintain impeccable posture, their faces grim with appropriate solemnity, their steps measured and synchronized. To stumble to show inappropriate levity or to break formation would be an unpardonable offense. Even the offerings made to the deceased after burial were governed by strict etiquette. Food, wine, and symbolic effigies would be placed at the tomb, accompanied by elaborate rituals and prayers conducted by designated officials. These offerings were believed to sustain the spirit in the afterlife and ensure its continued benevolence towards the living descendants. The type of food, the arrangement of the dishes, and the precise words of the prayers were all meticulously prescribed, reinforcing the enduring connection between the living and the dead and the king's eternal influence. You'd observe the precise placement of each bowl, each piece of fruit, knowing that even the slightest misplacement could be seen as an affront to the royal spirit. The etiquette of succession for the new king also played out during the mourning period. While outwardly demonstrating deep filial piety for his deceased father, the new king was also expected to swiftly consolidate his authority. His ascension ceremony, though steeped in solemnity, was also a powerful declaration of his legitimate claim to the throne, and every gesture, every pronouncement, was designed to erase any lingering doubts or potential challenges. This delicate balance between grief and governance was a brutal test for any new monarch. One particularly poignant historical detail is the ritual of Hwangap, a celebration of one's 60th birthday, which for a king was an event of immense national significance, a testament to his longevity and the stability of the dynasty. While technically a celebration of life, the preparations and etiquette surrounding it subtly acknowledged the king's eventual mortality. The meticulous planning, the gathering of auspicious symbols, and the prayers for continued health were all tinged with the quiet recognition of life's finite nature, a subtle interplay between the joyous and the inevitable. Finally, the concept of ancestor worship, central to Joseon Confucianism, meant that the etiquette of death extended far beyond the immediate mourning period. Royal ancestral shrines, Jeongeumyo, were meticulously maintained, and elaborate rituals were performed regularly to honor the spirits of deceased kings and queens. These ceremonies, involving specific music, dances, and offerings, were among the most sacred and formal events of the entire dynasty. Every step, every bow, every musical note was prescribed, ensuring the harmonious relationship between the living rulers and their revered ancestors. To neglect these rituals or to perform them incorrectly was seen as a direct affront to the royal spirits, potentially inviting disaster upon the kingdom. You could feel the solemn weight of history in these sacred halls, the air thick with reverence, and the echoes of countless generations of prayer. The brutal etiquette of Joseon death was not about fear of the unknown. It was about the profound belief that even in death order must be maintained, and the king's authority and the lineage he represented endured eternally. It was a final grand performance designed to ensure peace for the departed and prosperity for the living. A chilling reminder that in Joseon, even the grave could not escape the intricate, unforgiving grip of protocol. You've witnessed the entire, often brutal tapestry of Joseon court etiquette, from the simplest bow to the most profound rituals of death and succession. Now, as our journey through this intricate historical world nears its end, let's reflect on the echoes of etiquette, a lingering legacy. The rigid rules and unwavering formality of the Joseon royal court weren't just confined to the palace walls. They permeated the very fabric of Korean society, shaping cultural norms, social interactions, and even individual identities for centuries. And their influence can still be subtly felt today. It's like a deep, powerful river that continues to carve its path long after the rain has stopped, Think about the profound impact of Confucianism, the philosophical bedrock of Joseon. Its emphasis on hierarchy, filial piety, respect for elders, and the importance of ritual permeated every aspect of life from the grand ceremonies of the court to the humble interactions within a family. The etiquette you've witnessed was not merely arbitrary rules, it was the practical application of these philosophical ideals. Even ordinary people far removed from the palace lived by principles that echoed the court's strictures. The deference to parents and village elders, the meticulousness of ancestral rites, and the careful use of honorifics in daily speech. This cultural osmosis meant that the court was not an isolated bubble but a powerful template for societal behavior. The concept of face, che myeon, which you saw so vividly displayed in courtly interactions, continues to be a crucial element in Korean culture. The desire to maintain dignity to avoid public embarrassment and to preserve one's reputation and that of one's family remains deeply ingrained. The indirect communication, the subtle hints, and the avoidance of direct confrontation that you observed in courtly conversation are still to some extent present in modern Korean social interactions, especially in formal settings or when dealing with superiors. It's a silent cultural agreement to always provide an out to avoid corners and to maintain an atmosphere of harmony, even if it's a carefully constructed one. Consider the importance of education and scholarly achievement in Joseon, driven by the civil service examination system and the veneration of the literati. This legacy continues in modern Korea's profound respect for education and academic excellence. The meticulous study, the reverence for teachers, and the emphasis on knowledge acquisition that characterize the training of Joseon courtiers are values that resonate strongly in contemporary society. While the subjects may have changed, the underlying belief in education as the path to upward mobility and societal contribution remains powerfully intact. The aesthetic sensibilities refined in the Joseon court also left an indelible mark. The appreciation for subdued colors, natural materials, and elegant simplicity, particularly in art ceramics and architecture, was cultivated within the palace and spread outwards. The hanbok, the traditional Korean dress whose etiquette we discussed, continues to be a cherished symbol of national identity worn with pride during holidays and special occasions. The flowing lines, the delicate embroidery, and the graceful silhouette of a hanbok are direct descendants of the courtly aesthetics that dictated proper attire centuries ago. You can even see traces in modern design where a preference for clean lines and subtle elegance often prevails. However, the legacy isn't without its complexities. Some historians argue that the rigid hierarchy and intense pressure to conform, which were central to Joseon court etiquette, contributed to a certain aversion to direct criticism or dissent that can still be observed in some aspects of Korean society. The emphasis on collective harmony over individual expression while fostering stability may also have at times stifled innovation or open debate. The shadows of past conformity can sometimes make it challenging for new ideas to flourish without careful indirect cultivation. The ritualistic nature of social interactions deeply ingrained by court etiquette also persists. While not as extreme as prostrating yourself before a monarch, the emphasis on precise greetings, specific forms of address, and the careful exchange of pleasantries in social and business settings today often echoes the formality of the past. The way business cards are exchanged, the order in which senior colleagues are greeted, the structure of formal dinners, all carry faint imprints of the hierarchical customs that govern the Joseon court. It's like a dance with very subtle yet very specific steps that everyone implicitly understands. One intriguing academic debate revolves around whether Joseon's extreme emphasis on etiquette was primarily a tool of social control designed to maintain power structures or a genuine attempt to create a morally harmonious society based on Confucian ideals. The truth, as is often the case, probably lies somewhere in between. You can see how the brutality of the system kept people in line, but also how it genuinely fostered a culture that valued discipline, respect, and communal well-being. Even the food culture of Korea carries the echoes of Joseon court dining. The meticulous preparation, the emphasis on balance and presentation, and the communal sharing of numerous side dishes, banchan, all have roots in the sophisticated culinary traditions that flourished within the royal palace. While not as rigid, the underlying principles of respect for ingredients and careful consumption still resonate. It's a subtle callback to those grand banquets where every dish told a story of status and tradition. Finally, the deep sense of national identity and historical reverence that is so prevalent in Korea today is undeniably linked to the legacy of the Joseon Dynasty. The meticulous record-keeping, the grand palaces, and the enduring cultural artifacts from that era serve as powerful reminders of a rich and complex past. The narratives of Joseon kings, queens, and courtiers, shaped by the very etiquette we explored, continue to be told and retold, influencing how modern Koreans understand their heritage and their place in the world. The echoes of that brutal yet captivating etiquette are not just historical footnotes. They are living threads in the ongoing story of Korea. As the gentle hum of the fan fills the room, and the last images of the Joseon court fade from your mind, feel yourself drifting lighter now, away from the weight of courtly expectation. The bowing and the fashion codes, the silent meals and the whispered plots, they all recede into the gentle mists of history. Let the echoes of their strict world mingle with the quiet rhythm of your own breath as you settle deeper into your pillow. May the ancient kings and their formidable etiquette stand guard over your slumber, ensuring a night of peaceful, unbroken rest.